Alright, so now let's submit the form, get the data inside the controller and save this inside the posts.php. Now if we go to our create here, inside the action, what we can do is basically we can put the route and point it to posts.store method, because eventually it will hit the store method here. And the store method contains the request here inside the function parameters, which is basically the dependency management, and this is automatically being resolved by Laravel. So if we dd means dump and die. So if I dump and die request, and all means that it will give me all the data or all the information that the form contains. And let's see what happens. If I reload the page and I type in the title test post, and the description would be test description. By the way, I forgot to add a submit button here, but for now let's move back to this title field and hit enter. If I hit enter, oops, it says like the 419 page expired. Now what does this mean is basically the Laravel by default accepts the CSRF token field, and if you do not add that CSRF token, so what this basically CSRF means, it's called the cross-site scripting forgery. So it prevents our application from being attacked or the URL from being post URLs outside our project. So how we can do that? By using, there are two ways. The first way is @CSRF. Now what will this do? If I go back, reload the page, now if I inspect the page, you will see we have an input with the hidden token, and it contains this token. So this is basically a random token generated by Laravel, and Laravel will automatically check that token and will validate it. If it is valid, then it will process it. If it's not, then it will throw an error. Okay, the second way is basically we can use the double curly braces and CSRF token. All right, by doing so, if I reload, you can see the token will appear here, and we can do CSRF field here. So this will add the hidden field again for us. And if we go back, reload, inspect the page, you see we still have that. But what I prefer is basically a shorthand notation of CSRF. So this is basically a directive of CSRF token. Reload, and this will give us again the CSRF field. Now let's add the submit button. So div and create a button of type submit and just call it submit, like so. If I reload the page, now we have submit button. Obviously this is not what we are looking for, like this is not the perfect design, but we are not actually diving into the design yet. Our main purpose is to push the data to this posts table. So test post and description, and if I hit submit, now we see the token and we also see a description, but the title is missing here. The reason is that because we have not named this as title. We forgot to add the name attribute there inside our HTML. And if we reload the page, and by the way, I am using a fake filler extension here, which is given by the Chrome here. So if I click on that, it will automatically fill the data for me. You can obviously download that and install it in the Chrome, and by clicking on that, it will automatically fill up the fields. So if I submit, now we get the token, the title, obviously it's quite long, and then the description here. All right, now what we need to do is basically we need to store this inside the posts method. All right, so there are two ways. The first way is obviously we have not created a model yet. All right, so without, there are two possibilities: we can create with model and we can create without model. First of all, let's go ahead and quickly generate a model. So I will open up the terminal and PHP artisan make model, and I will call it as post. Now the post model is created. So if we go to the post here, you can see the post model we have. It is basically using has factory. We will see like what the factories are later on in the series, but as of now this is basically our post model. So what I can do is basically inside our store method I can point to post and then create. So not created, it's create. All right, so inside the create, this will accept the key and value. So our key is title, and from the request we can get the single request by using the http the input request input method. So we have the title here like so, and I will duplicate it for description. And if I reload the page, hit continue. Okay, so Laravel is giving us an error. So it is saying add title to fillable property allows mass assignment on this one. Okay, so what it says basically, Laravel by default does not allow you to go through or put all the data into the database if you do not define the fillables. All right, so let's define the fillables. So protected fillable, and let's put the title and description. Now if we set that, I reload the page, submit the form, and we should see the data saved. Okay, so if I reload the page here, basically the table, now we have the title here and the description here as well. All right, so but there is another way of doing this. So for example, you have a table which contains more and more and more columns, and defining all these columns, maybe 10, 15 or 20 columns, is quite cumbersome. So instead of that, what we can do is basically we can also use the guarded method here. So if we use guarded and we just put it an empty array, so it will let all the input to go into the posts table or any model table. Okay, so this is one way. So saving the record by this is the one way, and this is the most preferable way. Okay, what I prefer is by saving the record by this way. The second way is by using the query builder. So what we can do is basically we can use the database Laravel DB facade and then point to a table. So we will give the name of the table. So in that case we have posts, and then we can change the method of insert, and this insert will accept an array. So let's copy this array and paste it here, and obviously uncomment that as well. Now if we go back and let's fill out the form again and hit submit, now the record should be submitted in our database, and that works very well. Okay, there is one more way by using the Eloquent method. If I comment that out and just copy this one and paste it down here. So instead of create, there is another method called insert. Now what is the difference between create and insert? So if I go back, reload the page and fill the form and hit submit. Now if I reload the page, now you see that the record is being submitted successfully. But what will happen is when we will go or maybe let's go ahead and by default, let's say we set these fields to nullable. Okay, we change these to nullable, and that default should not be go something like that. If I just set null and hit save, now if we go back, reload the page, and I fake fill the data, submit it, go back. Now you see that in this case, what happens here is basically the created at and updated at fields are not being filled. So this is basically the difference between insert and create. Obviously we have created this table manually and we have set manually like this should be the default action should be like it should save the current timestamp into the created at and updated at. But when we will cover the migration section, in that case these will be by default null, and Laravel will automatically push these values when we are going to use the create method. Apart from that, if we are going to use the insert method, Laravel will not push those values by default, and in that case we have to define the values for created at, which would be now a PHP function, and updated at would also be now here. Now let's take a look at here one more time. Go back, reload the page, fill the data, and hit submit. Okay, so what's the different error here? It should be like updated at here. My bad. If I reload the page, hit continue, the record is saved, and there we go. Now the data is being saved into this created at method. If I now comment this out and uncomment this one more time, reload the page and submit it. Now you can see Laravel is automatically filling these created at and updated at fields out of the box for us. Here we have not mentioned these created at and updated at, and it is automatically doing by default for us.